The San Diego Padres and the Baltimore Orioles are discussing a trade that would send Dylan Cease to the Baltimore Orioles in exchange for a number of different prospects. We'll check out that rumor as well as what's going on with the Padres in general. Sounds like they're looking to make a multitude of trades this offseason before we get to the start of the MLB year. So let us know in the chat what you guys think the Padres will do, and let's get started. And welcome into the MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us late on a Saturday evening, the eve of the Super Bowl. Hopefully you guys have all your food planned, where you're going to be. Make sure you make safe plans. Make sure you're not going to be drinking and driving. Don't want to see any of that happen. So make sure safety is first. But hopefully you guys are ready for some baseball talk. Let's start with the San Diego Padres. Now, we've known all offseason long that they were limited with how much they had to spend this offseason. We knew about the lawsuit, the ownership issues, etc. We knew their payroll was increasing just by raises on their own roster that they were going to have to account for somewhere down the line. Even if they tried to sign anybody else, or didn't try to sign anybody, that is, they would still face an increased payroll from where it was last year. That's why we knew the trades were going to be coming for the Padres, especially when 3 of their top players are expected to be free agents at the end of the year, that being Dylan Cease, Michael King, and Luis Arraez. If you've been following us here at the Upside, you know we've talked about those 3 ad nauseum. But it seems like the most likely guy that's going to be moved is Robert Suarez. According to industry experts, they believe that Robert Suarez is a player in demand. With as high as relief prices have been this offseason, he would be a guy that would command a pretty return as far as prospects or players on the Major League side of things. So for the Padres that are looking to kind of retool their roster at the big league level a little bit here, go a little bit cheaper, maybe cost control players, guys with some length left on their deals, that might be a way that they could bring in some talent at the Major League level by offloading some of these deals. Now, the bigger rumor here is, of course, about Dylan Cease. It was reported today that they had discussed some trades, including guys like Kobe Mayo, Basayo, and even Jordan Westburg. Obviously, the Orioles declined every single one of those guys because obviously he has more value, or each one of those guys has more value than Dylan Cease anyway. So I do think the Orioles' interest there in Dylan Cease is real. I think they're going to wait for this price to come down, as they should. If I were the Orioles, though, I'd still be looking for somebody with more control on that contract. This would be more of rinse, repeat, and do it all over again with what they've done the last 2 years. You look at Jack Flaherty, who they brought in the trade deadline, left in free agency. They bring in Corbin Burns, leave in free agency. And now you're doing it all over again for Dylan Cease. At a certain point, madness has to stop. What's the definition of insanity? Repeating the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results. That's kind of what I'm thinking we're seeing here with the Baltimore Orioles if they go down the road of Dylan Cease. Maybe they just want to pay a lower acquisition cost and bring him in and hope they can sign him to a deal. But that was the thought process there with Flaherty. That didn't happen. That was the thought process there with Corbin Burns. Didn't happen. Now it's the same thought process here, you'd think, for Dylan Cease. And like I said, what's the definition of insanity? Say it with me. Doing the same thing again and again, expecting a different result. And that's where the Orioles are. I would like to see them go after a Pablo Lopez or a Sandy Alcantara, somebody with some control left on his deal past the 2025 season. All right, welcome in, everybody. Got a very active chat today. Notice we had a little bit of a competition for first into the chat, but welcome in Holly, Rafe, Ethan, Verlis. Congratulations, Holly, for winning today. Maybe tomorrow, Rafe. Let's see here. Argon, welcome in. They were just competing over who got first into the chat. The Orioles like to rent starting pitchers. They do. Holly, I'll be at work for Super Bowl watching it with my elderly people. Well, they got to enjoy the game too, so hopefully you have a good time. Rafe, I know we're talking baseball, but man, the Mavs are cooking. Looks like AD will miss the next 3 games, though, sadly. I haven't heard any update as far as AD status. I'll take your word for it that it's 3 games. I know some of the Dallas reporters were saying that automatically before they even got reports that they would probably keep him out through the All-Star break. I wouldn't doubt that they would do something like that, but it sounds like AD was moving around fine in the locker room after the game, so Those of you worried about AD status, I think he was just tweaking something that he had injured previously. He said he had a spasm and sounds like he's fine, but they might be extra cautious with him. Ethan, I haven't watched the Super Bowl in 4 years, won't again this year. I can't stand the Chiefs and the Swift Nation. There are several people out there that with that same sentiment, my friend. Sean, I don't think Alex Bregman is going to sign for a while. What do you think? I think he's got to sign sometime here before spring training. I do not think he's going to go into spring training without a deal, and if he does, I don't think he's going to go very long. I think this deal is going to come down very quickly. Not that the market hasn't been crystal clear for the past 2 or 3 weeks now for Alex Bregman, but with Alonso now off the board, a lot of the rest of the trade targets now kind of dwindling down. Hopefully we get to see a Bregman deal here in the next couple of days. Usually the past couple of weekends have been very slow as far as transactions, but on Sunday night we usually get a crazy one. So there's only one big name left on the free agent market. So who would that leave by process of elimination? Maybe, just maybe, Alex Bregman will sign. But again, it's the Super Bowl Sunday. I doubt we see anything big happen tomorrow. Our live will be very late tomorrow, just like this one tonight, so be prepared. Brady, welcome in. Mark Williams failed his physical after it was determined he had a subluxation of his, I'm not going to try to pronounce that one. The trade has now been nullified according to Shams. What should the Lakers do now? I would go after Mo Bamba on the free agent market. He actually had a good year with the Clippers this year, and for some reason they moved him for cost-cutting moves there with the Clippers. I would like to see them bring in Mo Bamba along with Jackson Hayes and just see if they can maybe add another center that has a little spring to him. That's what Luka really works with best. Even if he's not the greatest, most polished center, just somebody with some hops at that center spot, and that'd be the way I would go. Ethan, Lakers should sign Boban? No. He's too old and doesn't move around very well, and he doesn't have the hop that Luka likes to play with. Johnny, hey, Michael, are you tired of talking about Alex Bregman? No, honestly, it gives me something to talk about as we gear up to spring training. Once we get to spring training, I imagine we'll go through, all the typical, hey, how's the health, guys? What do you expect out of the year? We'll get into all of that kind of talk. I'm expecting we'll see some trades as we get to the start of spring training as well. The most active teams being teams like the Mariners, the Twins, and the Padres, who really haven't done anything this offseason to address their needs on the teams. Let's see here. Rafe, AD said he was going good and didn't expect to be out long. I didn't expect you to be out long either. It sounds like he was moving around fine after the game. Arenado wants a trade by next week. Doesn't surprise me that the Cardinals were the ones that re-engaged with the Yankees, Red Sox, and Dodgers. If you guys want to check out our live that we had yesterday describing the status of those negotiations. But anytime you see the Dodgers in negotiations with anybody, you have to think just in the back of your mind that they're going to be the team that pulls it out. I mean, we've gone over and over and over this, how the Dodgers say, no, we don't have the money, we don't have the roster space, we don't have the ability to bring them on, we're good at our positioning. And then they add and 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 add. It's just what the Dodgers have done this offseason. So, and then, what is his name? Andrew Friedman goes out there along with Brandon Gomes and basically says, guess what? We're in on everybody. And I take them at their word. They've been on everybody so far. And Arenado, I think, is the next piece that could go to the Dodgers this offseason. I think it would give them a good insurance policy there if Freddie Freeman's not ready to go by opening day, and to where they don't have to utilize him every single day, and will allow Max Muncy to move around in the diamond wherever they needed to utilize him. They can easily move on from Chris Taylor, just cut him, or see if somebody will take on $1 million or $2 million of his deal and save him a bunch of money in tax. That would be a possibility for them to make room on the active roster for him. Welcome in, Aiden. Appreciate you joining us. When do you see the rest of the free agent signings, like the pitchers? I would expect very quickly here. I don't expect many of these free agent starters to go very long into spring training. For instance, Andrew Heaney, I'd expect that deal sometime in the next week. Jose Quintana, among other starting pitchers like Nick Pivetta, I would expect those guys to sign relatively quickly. I saw a trade proposal, Alejandro Osuna and Yolfran Castillo for Ryan Helsley. Hell no. I ain't trading Yolfran in that deal. For 1 year of Helsley, not a chance. I think Yolfran Castillo's value as far as a prospect is about to explode. So I'm not trading him in that deal at all. I get it. He's a valuable arm. But I ain't trading you one guy I think that has a very strong future. Out of the guys that the Rangers signed out of the international class last year, him and Paulino Santana, and there's one other guy that I'm trying to remember that had really good years last year and look like they're the next big wave of prospects that's coming, along with Sebastian Walcott. I'm not touching your friend for 1 year of Ryan Helsley. Sean, where did you find that? Where did you find that on Arenado? I mean, that's something we had talked about a couple of days ago about Arenado, that they were looking to get a trade done. As far as Arenado personally wanting a trade, I haven't seen that specific article, so I'll agree with you on that one. But you can kind of sense that the Cardinals do not want to go into spring training with this hanging over their heads. They don't want the team having to address, what do you think about Arenado? Would you rather keep him? Would you rather trade him? I think they would just rather the storyline be gone. Whereas the Toronto Blue Jays, they're going to have a storyline that sticks with them throughout the entire year if they do not get that extension done with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And once again, another day goes by and no updates as far as where the things stand with Vlad Guerrero Jr. Sad news for Blue Jays fans there. But one other bit of Blue Jays news on a completely different subject anyway. Yorel Rodriguez, the international piece that they signed a year or so ago to be a starter in their rotation, looks like they're going to be moving him to the bullpen this year. So with the addition of Max Scherzer, they have just too many starters. They're going to try to use him in a long relief role out of the bullpen. Maybe they'll give him some high leverage innings, but it looks like he'll be starting the season at least in the bullpen. Rafe, I really think he was about to go for a triple-double in his first game. So hyped, and Christie was having himself a career day. So excited for this team, man. I'm pretty excited about the possibility. The one worry I have, even about this game, not even about the injuries, is about Kyrie Irving playing 42 minutes. You can't do that with him. You cannot. You need to be able to sustain a better rotation in your point guard minutes there. With Exum and Dinwiddie handling the ball handling responsibilities. And then Jaden Hardy has been a non-factor for the past 4 or 5 games now. He's completely out of the rotation. If you're going to play Exum and you're going to play Dinwiddie, jump their minutes up a little bit. There's no reason Kyrie should be playing 42 minutes in the middle of the regular season. You got to save him for the postseason. He is your one true ball handler that you can trust and really has the dynamic ability that Luka was the only other guy at that spot that could really handle. Dinwiddie's still a good point guard. Exum's still a good point, but nowhere near the level of Kyrie. So you got to take some of those minutes off of him. Rafe, about to jump back off for Strickland fight, but here for now. Hope you have a good live as usual. Thanks, Rafe. Appreciate you. Enjoy it. Hopefully goes the way you're hoping anyway. Jose, welcome in. A lot of Blue Jays fans are anxiously waiting Vlad Guerrero Jr. to sign an extension. No kidding. I mean, that's going to be the story there for Toronto. Not just this whole offseason, but the entire year. Are they going to be able to get the extension done before the start of spring training? Does Vladdy extend the window for them to be able to get that extension done? If they don't get that extension done, does he open up talks later in the season when he might be, willing to renegotiate on those types of things? And if he's not, where are they going to be willing to trade him if they're out of contention? If they're not out of contention, would they trade him anyway just to get some value back before they lose him for nothing in free agency? Once they get to free agency, how comfortable are they willing to make the best offer on the market for him? And how comfortable are they willing to lose him in free agency if they can't get a deal done? What's their plan B, C, D, E, and F? Because we've seen them miss on their top target over and over and over again for the past 2 years. That's what you have to look forward to if you're a Blue Jays fan, and that's just touching the very top of or the very tip of that iceberg. So it's going to be a very long season as far as Vlad Guerrero Jr. rumors. So be prepared for it, Blue Jays fans. It's going to drive you nuts within the first couple of weeks of it. Honestly, by the start of the regular season, you're going to have heard enough already. But we'll see if they get that extension done. But like I said, we've heard literally nothing. Could we get a Bregman signing tomorrow? Possibly. I think this is, 4 straight Sundays so far since the start of 25 that we've gotten a big news on Sunday late. And I would expect something again if the pattern holds. But it is Super Bowl. It's different than all the other Sundays we've had so far. So maybe, just maybe, this thing stretches into the beginning of next week. Rafe, they let Clay sit too much, I thought, especially for how well he has started to play. He started to play a little bit better, but I want to keep him fresh for the postseason. Do not let them wear themselves out during the regular season. And I get it, Clay's playing better, but don't up his minutes because he's playing better. Up his minutes because of, a need on the roster at that specific time, the situation, the game dictates it. Don't just increase it because he's playing a little bit better. You need to be able to save his legs for when you get to, or once you get to the playoffs, because that's where this season will ultimately be judged if you're the Dallas Mavericks. And Gafford needs to be careful, almost fouled out a few times, it seemed like. I mean, he's the only rim protector for the Mavericks right now, aside from AD. This was his first game. Once Lively gets back, he'll be just fine around that 24 to 19 minute mark. Lively probably pulling in that same range, with AD pulling probably 5 to 10 minutes at that center spot, with Washington getting some minutes at the 4. All right, let's go over a couple other news and notes from the rest of the MLB news from today. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. See a few likes on our video just popping through. Make sure you hit that heart if you're enjoying yourself. Let us know where you're watching from. Let us know your favorite team if this is your first time joining us. Follow us over at X on at Upside SN, and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network as well, to be notified when we do go live. The other news is from the Minnesota Twins, that they had to get ownership approval to make any moves this offseason. The article that I was referencing, MLB Trade Rumors, covered it great anyway. They said they had to get ownership approval on Harrison Bader and Danny Colon. Tells me how tight the budget there is in Minnesota, and if they're willing to cut some payroll, they could do very well at the trade deadline by moving off of some of their bigger contracts. I would not be surprised to see the Twins be one of the biggest sellers at the deadline this year, along with the Miami Marlins. One other bit of news was the trade talks anyway for Robert Suarez. Teams that have at least reached out to him. I've heard the Texas Rangers in connection with him. I've heard the Yankees in connection. The Mets have at least reached out. Cubs did reach out earlier this offseason. Detroit Tigers are another team that reached out as far as Robert Suarez goes. We'll see if that trade does happen, but the Padres are the epicenter of trades right now in Major League Baseball. So we'll see if that ultimately comes to pass. Let us know in the chat, where do you think the biggest trade is going to come from as we gear up for the regular season? Do you think we're going to see the Arenado trade be the big one? Jordan Montgomery? Do you think Dylan Cease is the guy that gets moved before the start of the season? Let us know in the chat which trade you guys are looking forward to most, and which one you guys think ultimately is the biggest one that we see before the start of the season. I don't think we're going to see any groundbreaking trades. I don't think we're going to see any, Luka Doncic-sized trades before the start of the season. But I do think we'll get a healthy number of them right at the start of spring training, and then right at the end of spring training, when you figure out what players are going to make your active roster, then you're going to see some guys, third outfielders, fourth outfielders get moved. Leody Taveras is one name I'm keeping an eye on out of Texas. And then as far as the free agent market, there's still a few more guys that could accept non-roster invitee deals to get into spring, see if they can latch on with the team and make a roster in spring training. So it's going to be an active few weeks here. So expect a bunch of small, tiny deals over the next week or so as teams try to build out their rosters before the start of spring training. Spring training does start here with less than a week to go. I think we're less than a few days, honestly, at this point for some teams. But spring training is about here. So it's a fun time of year. We talked a little bit about where teams rank as far as how their offseason was. We kind of grade them yesterday. If you want to check out that part of our video, we went through all teams, kind of breaking down how things worked out and what was left for them to do. Biggest item on the agenda is still Alex Bregman for a number of teams, most notably the Chicago Cubs and the Houston Astros. That's probably the biggest domino. Outside of that, it's going to be some of the starting pitchers as well. 4 days away, spring training. Yes, it is. Alrighty. Last thing I really wanted to get into before we head out for the night. There's not a whole lot to discuss this evening, but I know you guys are trying to get some rest for the Super Bowl tomorrow as well. But I wanted to get into some of the, where teams finished last year and what they really need to do to kind of finish off their offseason before we get to spring training. It's very close here, so let's go ahead and head over. Let me update my page here just to make sure nothing else has happened this evening. Who knows? Maybe we'll get an announcement from Bregman. One other bit of news that I forgot about, Kevin Kiermaier was in MLB last year. Now he's going to be a member of the front office there for the Toronto Blue Jays. His career is now over, and just as quickly, you thought Kiermaier was going to be out of baseball. Well, it didn't happen for very long. He is going to be a member of the Toronto Blue Jays staff there, and good on him going back to a place that he's had a lot of success as well. But I want to go over to the standings and show you where teams finished last year, just so we can kind of refresh our memory of how things finished last year as we gear up for the 25 season. There's your American League standings. Yankees, of course, on top. White Sox, of course, dead last with only 41 wins. Notice how there's not a 100-game winner here. Notice how there's not really a prohibitive favorite from top to bottom in the American League. That's why it's seen as pretty much wide open, especially when the best team, according to record anyway, ultimately loses their second best player on their roster to the crosstown rival New York Mets. This tells me that things are pretty much wide open for a lot of teams here. The Yankees took a step back losing Soto, but they took a few steps forward, bringing in Fried, Williams, Bellinger, Goldschmidt, etc. Guardians kind of took a half step forward and a half step back. Astros, I think they still need to add an outfielder. Otherwise, I'd say they've kind of taken a half step backward. Orioles, I think they've taken probably the biggest step backward for them because they don't have a number one. Royals, I think they took a tiny step forward with the addition of Jonathan India. As far as how big a step that becomes, depends on how well he ultimately hits there with Kansas City. Detroit had a great year last year, able to snag that last wild card spot, but they're going to do it primarily with pitching this year unless they add an Alex Bregman type. So they're loaded up, ready to go. Then you look at those first few teams out. We'll start with the Mariners. They're still pretty much right where they were last year. Same rotation, but they really haven't addressed that lineup. They need to do that before the start of the season. Justin Turner's one name that keeps being brought up over the last couple of days. Alex Verdugo's another one, and JD Martinez as well. Twins, we just talked about them. They're not expected to be very much of a factor in the American League Central this year. I would expect them to be a seller at the deadline. Now, maybe they surprise us. They do have a good pitching staff. Maybe they hang around, tread water until they get to the trade deadline, and then decide just to hold pat. Just being in the middle is the worst place you can be in baseball. You need to either be really good or really bad. Otherwise, you're going to be here for years and years and years. And I'd like to see the Twins kind of pick a direction here. Boston, they certainly improved. One of the most improved teams in the American League this year. Their rotation specifically is very much improved. If they add an Alex Bregman, I think they'd be right there as far as contenders to win the division there in a very difficult American League East. Tampa Bay Rays, I think they're going to finish right where they finished last year. Fourth best team in the AL East. I think they're going to get some good reinforcements from injury back, but I think this team isn't exactly a juggernaut this year. I think they're a team that's kind of treading water and needs to kind of pick a direction with some of their younger players. I do like the acquisition of Kim, but they need some of their young talent to really break through like they've had in years past. The other most improved team in the American League would be the Texas Rangers. Completely revamped their bullpen. They bring in Jock Peterson to help address that offense. They bring in somebody else to take Jonah Heim off his feet a little bit with Higashioka. They make a change at first base, trading away Nathaniel Lowe, bringing in Jake Berger, and giving consistent at-bats once again to Josh Smith or Ezekiel Duran, whoever ultimately latches onto the spot there. They are going to figure out things in center field as they go into the start of the season. But hoping Evan Carter is good and ready to go for the year, and he's back to being the prospect that we once thought he was, that dynamic force in the Rangers lineup that helped propel them to a World Series victory. And hopefully he can start hitting lefties and is healthy. That's the biggest thing. But the Rangers, one of the most successful off seasons, I would say, this year. That rotation still a little bit of a question mark. I think you need a little bit more innings, which is why I think they'll add another starter here, a non-roster invitee, or maybe make a trade for Jordan Montgomery. But I wouldn't rule them out as far as adding a veteran reliever like Kyle Finnegan or Kendall Graveman via free agency as well. Blue Jays, I think they're going to finish right where they finished last year, probably fifth in that division. I think there's a chance with Max Scherzer that they have, get up to say third in that division, which would put them in contention for a wild card. But that's pie in the sky hopes. This is a very inconsistent franchise that doesn't have much stability for it going forward. What are they going to do with Bo Bichette? What are they going to do with Vlad Guerrero Jr.? Is this management team still going to even be there by the All-Star break? Are they going to be there by the trade deadline? All fair questions to ask about the Blue Jays right now, which is why I think this leads them to finishing last in that division. Even though with the additions that they've made, they should probably be a little bit better team on paper. But I just think that noise around Vladdy is going to really distract from this team and ultimately cost them a little bit here. A is another one of the most improved teams in the American League. Really improved their pitching staff. Their offense should be just fine. I think they have a chance to finish 500 in a tougher division in the AL West. Angels and White Sox, I think both of those teams are clearly rebuilding. Not going to worry too much about a win total. But for the White Sox, you hope to get, say, 14, 15 game improvement would be a nice mark for them. But that still doesn't get them over 60 wins. So not going to be a very good year for them. Jose, you think Juan Soto will actually stay with the Mets for 15 years, or do you see him walking in free agency a few years from now if I think he leaves in a few years? I think the Mets won't give him the option to. I think they'll decline the ability for him to have the option and have him get an extra $4 million per year over the course of that deal, and I think he stays a member of the New York Mets. I don't think they let this one get to free agency, and I think he stays a member of the Mets. Remember, they can cancel that option if they increase his salary from $51 million to $55 million. So just something to kind of keep an eye on there. National League side of things, just kind of run through where the standings finished last year. Dodgers, of course, the runaway winner there on the NL side. But I think they have a real chance to break the record for greatest regular season in MLB history. But you got to go out there and win the games. Phillies, I think, took a little bit of a step back from their decision making here. I don't like their additions that they've made. They're counting a lot on internal improvements from Trey Turner and from Nick Castellanos. I do not like the acquisition of Jesus Luzardo. I think the Mets have passed them by to a certain degree. Now, maybe Dave Dombrowski has, some secret sauce that he's going to sprinkle over this team and say, here we go, now we're back to being where we were. But their problem has been in the postseason. They've been a good regular season team, but once they get to October, things just kind of fall apart for whatever the reason. So I thought they would shake things up and ultimately have not. Maybe that will cost them as the year goes along. Brewers, I think they're pretty much where they were last year. I think their bullpen needed some overhaul there with Devin Williams looking like he needed to be traded. They make the trade of Devin Williams. Now they bring in Nestor Cortez to help lengthen out that rotation. I still think they need another starter, but otherwise I'd say this is pretty much the same team we saw last year. Got to hope for good sophomore improvements from some guys, but usually that sophomore year is where you see some guys really struggle. So it's going to be a dogfight all the way through in the NL Central this year. The one team that might challenge them there, if they add Alex Bregman, I think would make them probably the favorite in that division, would be the Chicago Cubs. Padres had a decent offseason, finally solving some of their ownership issues most recently, but their offseason will be judged on what trades they ultimately make and who they bring in. But otherwise, 93 wins last year. I think they'll probably finish somewhere in that same neighborhood and win another wild card. Braves, I think they've had a decent offseason, but I think they needed to add another starting pitcher. I like the addition of Jurickson Profar, good multi-positional player, gives them insurance at shortstop if Arcia decides to move on at some point. I think he'd be a good upgrade over him, honestly, at that spot, but they're counting on Profar taking a spot in the outfield until Acuna is ready to go. Once he is, he'll function as that utility guy for the Atlanta Braves. Love the contract for Jurickson Profar, one of my favorite players when he was coming up with the Rangers, and I'm glad he finally got paid some good money for the first time ever. New York Mets, probably one of the most improved team on the National League side. They kept Pete Alonso, but the biggest thing for them, not only do they keep Alonso, but they add to a very good strength on their team already in that offense, bringing in Juan Soto. Biggest question mark for them is starting pitching. I think they'll address that at the trade deadline. I don't think there's any urgency to get a deal done now, so I do not expect them to pay a premium on a guy like Dylan Cease. Now, once Dylan Cease's market kind of price comes down, maybe they revisit that conversation. Maybe they talk to Houston about Framber Valdez if he doesn't sign an extension, or if you get to the trade deadline and they're out of contention, that would be another player I could see them going after as well. Teams that just missed the playoffs last year, Arizona Diamondbacks, one of the better off seasons, bringing in Corbin Burns, bringing in Josh Naylor. Still think they need to figure out the Jordan Montgomery situation and add a bullpen arm. But otherwise, a solid offseason for them. There's still plenty of closers out there that they could try to bring in via free agency. Do not be surprised if Arizona is one of the teams that signs one of those guys. Chicago, talked about them already. Like what they've done so far, but I give them an incomplete. They basically they're treading water based off where they were last year. They need some spark. They need something else in this lineup. Alex Bregman would be that guy. Now, would this put them over the top to win the World Series? No. But I would say it put them as the favorite to me to win the NL Central. Now then they go to the starting pitching. Maybe they go after Dylan Cease. They've been connected to him as well. Asking price is very high, though, on Dylan Cease, and I'm not sure the Cubs would be willing to do so. But again, they're all in on 2025. So all bets are off when it comes to what would a team do normally and rationally versus what does a team do when their job might be on the line there in Chicago with that front office. Cardinals, they're going to have a little bit of a down year. Do not expect much from them this year. They're going to probably finish 5th in that division, but they're the Cardinals. Maybe they'll surprise us and win 80 games. Who knows? But the Cardinals are going to go with more of a youth movement this year, which is why I'm surprised they haven't moved on from Ryan Helsley, who's got 1 year left, or Nolan Arenado, who's just taking up at bats in that lineup as well. Giants have had a good offseason, primarily because they've turned the page from Farhan Zaidi. So good on them for getting that job done. But the Giants, they finish, 4th out of the postseason spot last year, 9 games back of the final wild card spot. I like the addition of Willie Adames. I like the addition of Justin Verlander, but I think there's more meat on the bone this offseason. But at least they were able to finally move on from the Farhan Zaidi era and shake off that stigma that had been around that Giants organization. The stigma that says, hey, free agents, if you want a fallback option, come and sign here. But if you want to go to your first choice team, we are not that first choice. So I think they did a nice job changing the narrative around that Giants organization. Last few teams in the National League side of things, Reds, I think, had a nice improvement bringing in Terran Francona, bringing in Gavin Lux. I think they need to add another starting pitcher to that rotation to at least give them some more innings. Otherwise, a solid offseason. They're going to be right in that mix along with the rest of the NL Central teams. Could be a good year, could be a bad one. Pirates, I think they need to do more offensively. We discussed that a little bit last night. Otherwise, that starting pitching looks really good. Now's the time to capitalize on it. We'll see if they add anybody else during this time as free agents are trying to get signed before spring training. Maybe they'll get a deal or two. Final three teams here, Nationals, Marlins, and Rockies. The bottom two specifically, those are going to be complete rebuild situations. Rockies don't have any real juice going for them. They got to come up with a long-term plan. Marlins, they're going to be selling at the trade deadline. They tried to do that this past year, but due to poor performance and injury, they couldn't do it. So rinse and repeat, that's what the Marlins plan is this year. And for the Nationals, it's going to be about how those young guys perform and develop. Then they're going to spend in free agency next year as far as, like the Cardinals, they're trying to figure out what pieces are going to be there for the long term. That's what this year is going to be for the Nationals, kind of a fact-finding mission for them. Bill, welcome in. Joe, welcome in. Appreciate you guys joining us late on a Saturday night. Hopefully you guys are prepared for the Super Bowl. Got all your meal plans ready, that you're going to drive safely, I hope, and that's the biggest thing there. Cohen took Boris to the woodshed and whipped him. I don't know about that one, Bill. I do like the contract for both sides. I don't think either side got everything they wanted, which is what happens when you have a contract negotiation. I think Boris and Alonso got the AAV that they were looking for, but nowhere near the length. Meanwhile, the Mets, they had to surrender a little bit here to get Alonso to sign the deal, and ultimately got what they wanted in a short-term deal. So kind of a win-win for both sides. Each side is happy with some things. Each side's upset about others. That's kind of how things work out in the free market. Let's see here. Came in late. Did you cover the Red Sox? Touched on them just a little bit, that they're still in there for Arenado. No real updates today, other than the Dodgers, Yankees, and Red Sox are still interested in Nolan Arenado. How much they eat is still up for question as well, but the Dodgers are still in this conversation as well. So you got to think they would have to be considered the slight favorite here, because they just seem to get whoever, with however many prospects it takes to be able to get the deal done. The Dodgers really are, manifesting their success right now by spending and spending and spending, and not saying no to any small improvement on their roster. Which for Dodgers fans, gotta love it. For the rest of the league, makes it a little tough when you see them sign all the top guys, or at least the top guys. It seems like they're signing all those top guys as well. Any Yankees trade news? Not too much today. A very quiet day in Major League Baseball. Almost all the rumors were about the Twins, Blue Jays, and most significantly, the San Diego Padres. If you guys want to check out that conversation, I invite you guys to kind of start at the beginning when we do finish our live. But just to kind of recap things, Dylan Cease has had his name bandied about quite a bit, most notably with the Baltimore Orioles. This kind of fits the MO of what they've done the last 2 years with Flaherty and Burns. But it sounds like the asking price from the Padres is sky high. They're asking for Kobe Mayo, asking for Jordan Westberg, asking for Basayo. You're not getting any one of those prospects straight up for Dylan Cease. Now, you might be able to get a Hurstead as kind of a lead prospect in this deal, but you're not getting any of those three that I previously mentioned there. The other news is that Robert Suarez is the most likely guy to go from that Padres rotation, bullpen, and lineup. That there's a strong market out there for relief help, and they should be able to offload his salary and save themselves some money there. So they could get a decent MLB guy back in return. We'll see where he goes, and we'll see what the return ultimately will be. But it does sound like that's the one guy that sounds like could be moved relatively early in spring training. I know Arenado prefers the Dodgers. If he gets traded, Yankees might be his second destination. He's actually okay with all three. We've heard rumors already about the Dodgers early on in the offseason that he was comfortable going there, wanted to trade, ultimately didn't get this wish so far. Then we heard rumors about the Yankees that'd be comfortable going to New York. That was around the turn of the year anyway, from 24 to 25. And then most recently, over the past week, we've gotten a lot of rumors about the Red Sox. So I do think it's a three-team race here between all three of those. All right, appreciate you guys joining us. Let's head over to X and just see if anything is happening before we sign off. Like I said, not too much happening this evening. Let's see, go over to MLB trade rumors. We'll be live again late tomorrow. Hopefully we'll have some news on Alex Bregman. Literally nothing to report today. Dave Roberts is still discussing his extension. Old news. They've been discussing it for like 3 weeks, it seems like. That's about it. Alrighty. Appreciate you guys joining us this evening. I know it's kind of a shorter live, but again, nothing happening on Saturday for like the 3rd straight week. Hopefully Sunday for the 5th straight week we'll be active once again here in 2025 if the pattern holds. The one way that would happen is if they sign an Alex Bregman or an Andrew Heaney or somebody like that. Let's hope it's Alex Bregman to finally get that saga over with. But appreciate you guys joining us. hit that like and subscribe. Appreciate all you guys' support, the super chats, all your interactions. Have a lot of fun chatting with you guys. And hopefully, Rafe, don't know if you're still in our chat, but I hope you get your victory tomorrow, getting here first anyway. But you'll have some stiff competition for it tomorrow. All right. Hopefully you guys have a great night. Again, drive safely tomorrow. Make sure you have a plan to at least have a ride back home if you are going to be drinking. Do not drive. I know Super Bowl is fun and everything, but that doesn't mean it's an excuse to do whatever the heck you want. Be safe, and hopefully we'll be able to talk some baseball with you guys tomorrow. Let's see here. Bill, nope. Yankees have zero interest in Arenado unless they trade Stroman and LeMahieu. I think that would have to happen unless the Cardinals eat a significant portion of Arenado's salary, which is what I think is being discussed, because it was the Cardinals that reached out to the Yankees, Red Sox, and Dodgers, not the other way around. So they might be opening up the pocketbooks just a little bit more and eat a little bit more of that salary. Otherwise, I would agree with your point there, Bill. All right. Y'all have a great one. Again, drive safely. We'll see you guys late tomorrow night. Stay safe out there, everybody.